Hi, ladies and gents. Welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Square. I'm your host, Kage, with
Neff.
And Buttons.
And today we're going to talk about a little bit of Venom, a little bit of Smile 2, as well as Terrifier 3. Anyone who's been listening has known that we are big fans of Smile here. We talked about it in the very beginning of the year. We've talked about it throughout the year that we wanted a sequel, and a sequel was announced, and we were like, we're going to go see it. So that's something we're going to talk about right now. Smile 2, kind of go around the table and check everybody's thoughts. I saw it. I'm going to say I'm going to give it, I'm probably going to give it a 7 out of 10. I'm kind of fuzzy on that. Without giving too much away, it was more of the same. Someone seeing something that no one else can see, people dying. It was more of the same. I think the first movie was better just because the concept was new, the monster, the entity, whatever you want to call it, it was new and fresh. Whereas this one, you don't really need to explain to us, the audience, what this thing is. We know what it is. We know how it operates. The only difference is the main character is famous. And so what do we know about famous people? Famous people are always on camera, always seen, always surrounded by people, be it fans or staff or whatever. And so that kind of adds an interesting dynamic to the entity, so to speak, the visions, so to speak. Because in the first movie, it was a lady by herself freaking out a lot. And she was trying to track down the origins, what this thing is, where it came from. And, and she's not just learning about it, she's running from it, And she's unfortunately dealing with that alone, She does kind of get some people on her side to see what's going on, but in the end, they don't really add anything. They don't help her fix it.
Correct.
They don't see any more resolution than she did on her own. And so this movie, it has, I would say that the cast was fine. The effects were fine. But I feel like there was a little bit too much jumping around. And I don't mean in a Witcher Netflix sort of way, timeline wise. I don't mean that, but again, if you've seen the first Smile, you know that there's things that the affected person sees that isn't real. Some of it's real, some of it's not. And I feel like there was
deeply psychological.
Very psychological, exactly. So as someone in the audience watching this, you watch a 20, 30-minute scene play out, and then the rest of the movie goes on, and now you're wondering, did that scene really happen? Or was that in her head? And so it makes it really hard to be invested, to care about this character, their motivations, their struggles. Why do I care? If everything's not, how much of it's not real? Is the whole movie not real? Is the whole thing, that's kind of a cop-out, I think.
Great points.
I think that's a cop-out. But all in all, it held my attention. I sat through it. I did like the ending, but it was, at the same time, it was expected. Just given the nature of the protagonist. But let's go around and see what people think. Neff?
Yeah, very good analysis there, Kage. Have to agree with majority of everything you said there. I gave it a little higher score of a 75. I really do praise the cinematography in this film. Definitely excellent. The writing of the film was decent. It does expand upon the universe of Smile. We've talked about this before off mic, and I've said it before on the weekly. Smile 2 is a film that I probably would not recommend if you're not into Smile. Because if you go into Smile not knowing what happens pre-Smile 2, you're going to be extremely confused as to what is going on. Very entertaining film. Naomi Scott is a great actress. I've said that she should probably get an Oscar for Best Actress this year as far as just individual performance. It almost seemed as if she took over the film as far as caliber of acting. Obviously, she's the main character. I think Jack Nicholson's son's actually in the film as well. He's playing her boyfriend who passes away. We're not trying to give away too many spoilers. Obviously, the movie's been out for about almost a month now, so it has been out. There has been time that's elapsed, but we're still trying to keep it somewhat spoiler-free and give you guys a good review. So yes, Jack Nicholson's son is in the film. He passes away. There's a backstory to that. Obviously, like we said, if you've seen Smile, it's kind of more of the same. I would just say that this film expands upon the universe of Smile. You're actually seeing I guess, the trauma monster through someone that's famous's eyes. So it's just a different spin on it. I do prefer the first one more because it is more grounded than the second one. But I will say, if you're talking about what film expands upon the universe way more, it is this one. It's just they took it to the next level with this one. If Smile 1 was at a 5, they turned it up to a 10 on this one, especially with the different elements that the trauma monster has in its toolbox at this point. Sometimes it seems almost overpowered. There are you could say players within the film that seem like they don't really need to be in the film. I told Kage and Buttons here after my review that they could have cut 20 to 30 minutes off the film. I think it would have made it more compact and even better than it was. Like I said, a 7.5 out of 10. Naomi Scott killed it. Obviously, like I said, she's leading. She's singing the songs. The choreography, everything about it. It's I guess it's a full circle performance. And like I said, if she gets nominated for something in the Oscars, or I should say Academy Awards, if she gets nominated for something there, I would not be surprised at all because I think she did put in the work on this film. And the budget of this film was $28 million, and I think it's currently sitting at about $112 million at the global box office last time I checked. Obviously, with this weekend passing, could be a couple more millions added to that. The film is a 4X. It is a blockbuster, so another successful outing for Paramount Pictures and Smile. As far as Smile 3 goes, more than likely you will get a Smile 3. Don't want to tell you guys what happens at the end of Smile 2, but it's going to be very interesting to see how they create Smile 3, what direction they take this story into. It's going to be extremely interesting. I want to know if there's a way to actually beat the trauma monster. So that's going to be interesting to see in the future. But with all that being said, definitely enjoyed the film. I recommend it to anybody that likes Smile 1. Me and Kage definitely are fans of Smile. I think Buttons is a fan of Smile 1 as well. I actually own Smile. I may buy this film, may not buy it. Like I said, the only thing I can really say that really took away from the film for me was the fact that it ran a little long. There were some scenes where the acting was over the top, in essence. But overall, decent film, definitely worth the watch, especially if you are into Smile. Buttons, you think you'll be seeing Smile 2 on streaming?
Yeah.
You have Paramount, right?
Yeah, I have Paramount.
Yeah, it's going to be on there soon.
Yeah, so, I remember when we first watched the preview for Smile 2, and I was kind of on the fence at first glance of it because of the whole superstar element of it, because there were some things that I wanted out of it that it kind of hinted at, but I'm pretty sure we never got that group, setting or possibility, I guess you could say. And for me, it seemed almost like it was going to just kind of tease you throughout the whole movie as far as like what was going to happen. And then it turned out to be more like, the first one than you would have wanted with what they were setting it up as far as possibilities. But, it did look like it was giving some new information. It was a different angle, which was nice. And ultimately, I didn't go watch it because I ended up watching Venom instead. But it's definitely one that I do plan still to watch. And, listening to you guys give it, your scores, it kind of looks like it's going to fall kind of middle of the road for me too. Like there's going to be some disappointments, but there's also going to be some good points to it. So it's definitely going to be worth a watch for me.
The movie's overall a good film.
I didn't give it a 10 out of 10, but I still do recommend that
Yes.
people go out there and give it a shot. Of course, do not watch it if you do not watch the first one.
Smile was the best movie to come out in October.
For this year, yeah.
Yes.
I am inclined to agree.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to agree. But speaking about Venom, that is our next topic. So Venom, yeah, I saw that. I gave it a 6 out of 10. You know, Venom is a cool character. And before I say anything else, let me just say this. I'm not a Marvel lore master. I don't know everything there is to know about Venom, okay?
Right.
So please forgive me if I mess up some stuff here. But like, watching the movie, it's called The Last Dance. It's supposed to be the end of this story. Will it be the last Venom movie ever? That's debatable. Maybe in this universe, who knows? But as far as this film is concerned, you know, I like Tom Hardy. I like the visual effects of Venom. Obviously, it's very CG heavy, but hey, it has to be because we don't have symbiotes to put in movies in real life, as awesome as that would be. But like, all in all, it held my attention, but I was very disappointed, and it's very difficult for me to talk about said disappointment
Without
without
spoilers.
spoilers. So I'm gonna do my damnedest to not do that. But it is revealed in the trailers that there are other symbiotes. I will say that. I'm not gonna say which ones, but there are other symbiotes in this film. But I feel like all in all, it was very rushed. I feel like we didn't get a chance to know about these other symbiotes because they show them and they move on to the next scene or the next one. Show them, move on to the next scene, and you're like, okay. And it's like, how are you supposed to be invested? How are you supposed to care about them if you show a new symbiote that we've always known about in the lore? Again, I'm not a lore master, but even I knew that there were a ton of other symbiotes. I do know a little bit about the lore, their planet, their leader, that type of thing. It was just disappointing to just not see.
Can I
More.
just make a quick observation? Because I mentioned this off mic earlier, and I feel like, to me, and maybe you kind of got this feeling as well, but it felt like a soft reboot. It felt like, because you're introducing a new evil overlord bad guy, and then like the main plot of it felt very reminiscent of like Transformers. And
I can see that a bit,
and
yeah.
so by the end of the movie, with how they leave it, and again, this is without trying to give it too much spoilers, they do set it up to follow more within the Marvel Cinematic Universe with different leanings towards what the underlying
Yeah.
story was originally from the very first movie.
Yeah.
Like when Venom, the first Venom was, when he's introduced in the first movie, they make it seem like, okay, they're on this, they came to Earth and they're looking for hosts, and he gets Eddie Brock as his host, and it's very difficult for them to find compatible hosts, like for the symbiotes. Like that's kind of the premise of it. He finds Eddie, they are able to bond or whatever, and make a pact or whatever you want to call it to live together, right? Like that's the whole symbiotic relationship angle of the underlying purpose of Venom having to live inside Eddie Brock. And you know, in the first movie you have other symbiotes, and so there's the evil one who's trying to kill Venom, and I can't remember what his name was.
Riot.
Yeah.
Riot. Okay, so Riot's trying to kill Venom, right? And then they have their big face-off, their battle or whatever. And so for me going into this movie, I had rewatched the first Venom, but I had not watched Carnage, which was the second one, Let There Be Carnage. I didn't rewatch that one. And I felt kind of like some of the characters and backstory I kind of missed or had forgotten about in this third one, which would have made a little bit more clear what was going on. But for sure, there was a character, Strickland. It's like something. It's not Stryker. It's like Strickland or something.
I know
like
who
that.
you're talking about.
But he's like he's kind of like this guy who's military, and he's like, oh, Venom, we have to capture him and kill him, like all aliens are bad kind of thing. And he's popped up in some of the other Marvel movies, and so to see him in there, you kind of almost want to know who he is, like when you're watching this movie,
Yeah.
because it makes his character, gives him the backstory, because they don't give him a backstory in Venom.
True.
They're just like, oh, he's this guy. He's a guy, the military guy who's trying to undermine the scientist doctor who's in this movie. And she's very much got her own backstory, and I would have loved to have seen more of her backstory in this movie, because it seems to play pretty heavily as into who she actually is. And because I didn't read the comics and stuff like that, I'm sure she has a very specific name and importance, and we all want to know what that is, but they
Yeah.
don't go into it, because again, I think this is like the soft relaunch where her
Okay.
character, you'll recognize her from this movie, and then when they bring her into other movies, or if they continue and they give her her own movie, because either they're gonna throw her into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and be like, here you go, here's her character now. She was introduced in this Last Dance, and now here she is. But I don't know if that's the case of this, because that's how they can really either relaunch her into this, or they can say, oh, okay, there's this character that she could start her own series.
Yeah, the lore of the symbiotes of Venom is very expansive. You could easily turn this into a Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, have 2.5, 3-hour movies each to really flesh out the lore of all the symbiotes. You could do that. There's enough material. And you can say the same for really any Marvel, if you think about it. Marvel's been around for how many decades now? There's more than enough out there to really go ham.
I will say this real quick, just because it made me think of like what you were talking about with Harry Potter, is so my other connection too with like the whole Transformer thing is because when they do introduce the other symbiotes, they are very short introductions, but they have so much character to them to where you're like, I want to know who this person is.
Yes.
I want to know more.
Yes,
and yet you really get like maybe anywhere from 30 seconds to
Yeah,
like 2
that
minutes
right
of
there.
screen time. And
That
then
right-
it's like, but wait, no.
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
exactly.
no,
That
no.
I mean, that right there
Wood chipper.
sums up. It sums up kind of my problem with this film is that there's so many symbiotes and they all have their own personalities, their own abilities. Dude, I want to know.
Right.
I want to explore. I want to see that on film. I want to see their other cool abilities. I want to see it, and I just feel like we didn't even get a name on most
Oh,
of
no,
them.
no,
They
you
just
don't-
show
yeah.
them for a bit, and you see them fight and do a scene or whatever, and then it snaps over to the other one, and it snaps over to it. Like I was just like, that was lame.
Yeah.
That was pretty lame. I want to see what these things can do.
Launching back into the performance of this movie in terms of the box office, it really felt like, when money gets decommissioned and it goes through the paper shredder, I kind of felt like that is exactly what they did with these characters. And
Yeah.
that's why this did not perform as well as
There's-
it could have, because they were literally throwing them into a paper shredder.
Yeah,
And
there's
just, there went your box office.
there is something. So in the beginning of talking about Venom, just now, we mentioned that this is the Sony.
Right.
We need to make that clear. We're well aware that this is Sony's thing. So Venom and Spider-Man, they are Marvel characters, true. But again, as we all know, this is this weird little caveat where Sony, even though it's Marvel, it's
Well,
Sony's
and-
thing right now.
Yeah, but
And-
they've been hinting at for a while, especially like with the last Spider-Man, about bringing Venom
Well, right,
and
I'm-
Spider-Man
So
together.
I'm getting to that. So what I'm saying is, it's no secret, and again, I'm going to do my best to not spoil, but it's no secret that they were trying to connect to the Marvel Universe. They were alluding to it, and this isn't speculation. If you've seen the last Spider-Man movie, not the animated one, but if you've seen the last Spider-Man movie, you see the little teaser with Eddie Brock on the beach with Venom. They showed that for a little second, and then it blips out, and we're like, like that's it, that's it,
Literally the blip.
Yeah.
Literally the blip. That's
Yeah,
why they bring
and
Eddie
so
Brock into this.
and
is with the
so
blip.
in this film, they talk about
They joke at it.
they joke about it, and they
The
talk about
multiverse.
the events in the Marvel universe.
Yes.
And I'm really tiptoeing here. They talk about it, and
I feel like everybody knows about the blip. I mean, I feel like that's not a spoiler. You guys
Well-
know what happened with the blip. Thanos, the snap.
well, we
the
talk,
blip.
yeah. So we talk about that. Now, here's my problem: if you're going to make that connection, then you need to dot your I's and cross your T's, and make sure you don't have anything that contradicts that in the past. Because now you're trying to make a connection. I see what you're doing. Because the problem is, and I'm not going to say who, but they cast someone who is pretty big, or kind of big, in the Marvel movies, right? Mm-hmm. And this person was a villain. They have a backstory. They were not like a super main character, but they were recognizable enough. So when I see this person in Venom, I'm like, is he undercover? And he's not. And he actually has this name. But if we're making connections to the Marvel films, to the blip, then why is this person in here? I feel like they screwed up. I feel like they should have cast that individual to be someone else, because you're breaking the immersion right now. That person should not be there because of what I saw in the previous Marvel films. Mm-hmm. When you see this movie, when you see Venom, and I do encourage people to see it, I'm not calling it a bad movie. It definitely was not my favorite. I think it could have been better, but I still recommend you guys give it a go. Give it a watch. And it's been out for a while. Watch it when it comes out on stream. Okay, this isn't Dune. Okay, Dune, I would say watch on IMAX. If you had the chance. But this, just stream it. Just give it a chance. See what you think. And when you see this character, when you finally see this character, I hope you remember what I said. You'll understand what I'm talking about.
Good discussion there, guys. So the box office for Venom: Last Dance is at $345.9 million and a budget of $120 million. So almost a 3x. Now, obviously, this didn't perform as well as the first Venom or Let There Be Carnage, but, when you're kind of playing with a surplus amount of money that you've made off those other two films, you can kind of take an L there. So I would have thought they would have tried to, finish this trilogy up a little differently, probably more serious aspect to it.
It was too goofy. It was too goofy. That really knocked it down for me.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add before we move on is that Venom, I didn't like the goofiness. I had a problem with that. But I really feel like this franchise would do better is if I don't have a problem with the actors. I don't have a problem with the acting. But I really think if they would have made this rated R, you would have gotten more numbers. You would have gotten more butts and seats.
Right.
Because Carnage is not PG-13. Carnage alone is not PG-13.
But all the movies have been. The movies have been PG-13.
Well, they have, but I'm saying they shouldn't have been.
Right. No. I'm just saying
if they reboot
they
Venom,
kept it because the other two had been.
Well,
That's
right.
what I'm
I
getting
understand consistency, but I'm saying overall, the franchise, if they ever decide to reboot it, you need to do this right. Not to say that I'm like, oh my God, I need violence. I'm not saying that, but it has to make sense within the universe, within the story, within the characters that you're talking about. When I watch Friday the 13th, I expect blood. When I watch a zombie movie, I expect gore.
Right.
When I watch a live action of Lilo and Stitch, I don't expect gore.
Yeah, you're basically
What are you talking about?
you're saying the PG-13 rating limits the product.
Exactly. And I can't say that for all films because it really depends on the story.
Right.
But, dude, Venom? Come on.
Yeah, man. That's
He makes, like, first off, he and Eddie Brock are not best buds, being roomies, chasing love and doing, no. And Carnage and Cletus Cassidy, because I watched the second Let There Be Carnage right before this, in fact, I'm like, they're psychotic. They're on the same page through and through. They're not like, he's not arguing, because I can talk about Let There Be Carnage, because that movie's already out. Because there's a love thing going on. You know, Cletus Cassidy has a love interest.
Right.
And Venom doesn't care about any of that, especially when said love interest has a sound ability, which is exactly the opposite of what all symbiotes, including Venom, they hate that. They can't, it'll kill them.
Right.
And so there's this dichotomy between the two characters of, like, you know, hey, I need to be alive, but I'm not afraid to kill you and go to another host. There is that element between Eddie Brock and Carnage. And I think that was absolute crap, to put it bluntly. So I feel like if they redid this franchise, and I have no problem with the effects, but if you made it rated R, made Carnage gritty, made Carnage scary, made Venom scary, Venom is a bad, he's bad.
Got a big following,
he
too.
has his good moments.
It's not hard to make a great Venom film. It's really not. They make it harder than it is.
I completely agree. But I just feel like they really missed an opportunity here. And I'm not saying every Marvel movie needs to follow in Deadpool's footsteps and everything be rated R. No, it really depends on the context of the film. The symbiotes are nasty, nasty, violent. Like, it's pretty brutal.
Well, that was kind of why I was saying is it's almost like when you're watching this, you see like this new. Okay, so obviously in the first Venom, like you said, they kind of set up this relationship where him and Eddie are at odds, and then by the end of the movie, they're almost becoming friends or whatever. Like they're learning to live with each other and make compromises as far as like, hey, we're not going to kill just any random person, only the bad people.
We're roommates.
Yeah.
We're best buds.
Because, you know, Eddie Brock his character is supposed to be like almost very over the top, straight and narrow in terms of like, hey, don't kill people. And he's like, well, now I have to kill people, so only kill the bad people. And with the second one, they've almost created like this bromance between them in the second one, where like they have their little tiff and they break up temporarily, and you're like, oh, all the feels, right? Like they have to get their brohood back. Like that's the way. Like, because he runs off, right?
Yeah.
Like Venom runs off, and then, you know, they get back together toward, you know, at the end, right? And then in this one, it's like they've established it. Eddie Brock is almost like, just like, oh God, like when did all of these things happen? Like I don't remember, you know, half this stuff. Like, and he has like this whole weird thing with the Asian lady, what was her name?
Miss Chen.
What was it?
Mrs. Chen.
Mrs. Chen, yeah, yeah. So anyway, like they have like the whole thing, and I was like, it's funny. It's a little bit of comic relief in there, but again, it edges on goofy. They're dancing, in like this penthouse suite, and it's very weird because Venom's like, Eddie Brock's like, when did you guys all rehearse this, right? Like it's like this whole choreographed dance number that they're doing, and he's like, when did you even have time, right? And that's the over the top goofiness of this. Even Rise Ifen's character, who's the dad with the family that are going to the Area 5001. I really liked his character, but did he have any importance to this movie? No. Like I liked all of the scenes that he was in with the family and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, but that's a completely separate movie. Like that's a whole completely different. It was unnecessary.
This is what I'm going to
push the movie forward to do anything. It was just like, hey, randomly, oh well, you're trapped out in the desert. You run across the family. They bring you into town.
Yeah.
Like then randomly they pop up later, and you're like, oh, because I remember you. Like that's
like,
why are you here?
There's a lot of hokey moments that really degraded the quality of the film, in my opinion. It took me out of it.
I don't think it degraded
Well,
it.
well, again, I like, even though, like, I will say this, even though it was PG-13, even though it had the goofy comedy, at least it was consistent.
With the other
I
ones,
will
yeah.
give them that, because if they turn around and release the third film and made it rated R super serious, would it be a great film on its own? Yes. But because it's a sequel, it's connected to those other films, the overall franchise has me like, what?
Venom,
You know what I
Venom
mean?
is the
So-
same
so it's like-
character throughout 3 movies.
Right,
Like,
right, so-
he has his whole little character arc, and by the end of this film, you're like, okay, that's his natural progression of Venom. Like,
Yeah.
you see him, he comes, he's like completely oblivious to like human emotions and everything else, and like being a good person or having whatever, like
Yeah.
morals. And then throughout the 3 movie arc, you see him come full circle where he's like, oh, I am more of a good guy than a bad guy.
Right.
Like, you see that progression of him being like, oh, he's completely evil, oblivious to what's going on. But that's just how these 3 movies set up this version of Venom.
Right.
That's what I'm getting at, is it would have felt very weird for him to regress, you know, to what he was like in, you know, before he
Yeah.
had any interaction with Eddie Brock. It would have been really weird. Whereas at the end of this one, he's like, you know, oh, like I was mentioning with Rise Iphans, like, he's like, oh, I'm really glad we didn't eat this family. Like,
Yeah, like if you're gonna be hokey and goofy, at bare minimum, at least be consistent.
yeah. And they
Yeah.
were. They
Because
were
you're
very
betraying your, I think as a director and a writer, you're betraying your own work, your own story, if you turn around and say, oh, we're gonna make this rated R, it's gonna be super serious. It's like, what, are the last 2 films a joke to you?
It's not
You
lining
brought
up.
down the overall franchise because you shifted gears, but because you stayed consistent, I respect that.
Yeah, for sure.
I respect that.
So, great talk about Venom, guys. So we covered Smile 2, we covered Venom 3, The Last Dance.
Box
Let's
office,
talk about
yeah.
Terrifier real quick.
Terrifier
Now, no one
3.
here saw the film, but obviously a lot of people that are fans of Terrifier raved about this film. Are you guys ready for these box office numbers?
Lay it on me.
Budget, $2 million. Box office, $76.8 million. That's in 38x. So,
So
a mega blockbuster.
I will say, I will give Terrifier this, because I have not ever watched any of them, but I have seen
You
clips.
saw the shower scene.
I've seen clips.
Congrats. So did
And
Kage.
That was enough for me.
Yeah, so I will just say this about those movies. For the budget that they have, the visuals and the graphics and stuff, because I mean, I think they use a lot of practical effects and a lot of stage, stage effects as far as like, you know, your typical slasher movies. And it's very realistic looking, I will give them that. You don't really need CG for most of the scenes and attacks and stuff that are in these movies. You know, if that's what you're into, if you're into like the bloody, gory, very graphic slasher type,
Over the top.
movies, this is definitely for you. This is definitely going to be one of those ones where I'm not sure what for me personally, I'm not sure what the entertainment value is, because the story itself is very simplistic. It's just basically,
Let's get to the action.
yeah, let's get right into killing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need a whole lot of depth. These movies, I mean, this is the 3rd one. It doesn't need the depth. There doesn't need to be a whole lot, because we keep getting, outrageous returns on these movies, and they're going to keep making them because they're getting really great returns.
Yeah, I want to talk about that real quick. Something, and maybe we can have a future episode about this, but for example, I heard that the Final Destination franchise has another movie. Will it be the last movie? I don't know. Very recently, there was the passing of Tony Todd, aka Candyman. He has been in most of the Final Destination films, kind of the creepy Grim Reaper type. He knows a lot about death, if you know about those films. And as that franchise has gone on, the deaths have gotten just more and more ridiculous to where I can't take it seriously anymore. And I think there's one Final Destination movie that I actually didn't see. 1 and 2, I think those are good, but there's only so much stupidity I can take of a random brick falling, or like, really? like I can't care anymore because it's just too ridiculous.
And yet
That being,
every time you're on the highway in that semi
Now-
with all the logs
well,
coming
true,
running by
true.
you, you're like,
That Final Destination 2 instilled a fear in millennials everywhere
Or a truck with pipes on
Exactly.
with pipes or
Pipes or
logs.
logs.
We all know it. We all see it.
and
and
I will
it's-
say that plate of glass, when that plate
Oh,
of
yeah.
glass fell and just,
Oh yeah,
whoosh.
yeah. So the point is, though, to kind of bring it back, is that that film is over the top violence, and while Terrifier series is not my thing, that's too ridiculous. Horror movies, we've said this before, horror movies operate on a different wavelength. They tend to have smaller budgets and they tend to have smaller returns in comparison to other film genres.
Right.
However, if
Because
you
your target audience
Right.
is smaller.
but at the same time, when they have a small budget, their return is up there. It may not be up there like the Harry Potter movies, like
But for-
Avengers
for the
Endgame,
return of investment,
but for this is a kind of a motto that a trend that horror movies in particular tend to follow. They don't make $7 billion. It's not like that, but they still do very well in
For their
comparison to the
initial
budget. Yeah, that they put in.
Great points. So yeah, if you guys watched Terrifier 3, please let us know what you thought about it. I've obviously covered this on the weekly a couple times, got some cool comments about the film. Also seen a lot of comments online from people about Terrifier. Overall, the film is a massive success. One of the biggest returns that this series has had. I still think Terrifier 2 had a bigger return than this, crazy enough. I believe the budget for Terrifier 2 was $200,000 and it made $15 million. So just do the math on that. But a 38x return on Terrifier 3, and Terrifier 4 is in development, and that has been confirmed by Damien Leone. So I'm sure you guys will be getting Terrifier 4 within the next 2 or 3 years, especially with the money that this film made. They've got plenty of money to write up another film and get that out in theaters to the people that want to see that, and I'm sure Terrifier 4 will do good as well. Will be very interesting to see what direction Art the Clown goes into and where that story goes. But with that being said, guys, I think we covered a lot of great topics, basically the whole month of October, maybe a couple films we might have missed in there, but we definitely hit the big ones. Smile 2, Venom, The Last Dance, and Terrifier 3. So with that being said, guys, please comment down below if you watched any of these films this past October. October was a decent month. We've had some rough months throughout the year, but October, it was decent. It wasn't the worst. And then we're going into November, so that's going to be interesting as well, and we'll be speaking on that in the future. But like I said, comment down below, ring the bell for notifications, share with a friend. Please subscribe to the channel. I am Neff signing off with my co-host,
Kage.
And
Buttons.
as always, be safe.